There's a dangerous trend amongst entrepreneurs to be everywhere and do everything and to hustle to get your business scaled.
Yeah. So in this episode today, we're going to be talking about the very real impact that often comes from this, which is entrepreneurial burnout.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action, and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started. All right.
Hustle, hustle, hustle.
We had a serious topic today. Even more so serious because I recently went through this myself. So it's fresh.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think it's something that's plaguing, I would say the industry, if you can call entrepreneurship an industry.
Sure can. Online entrepreneurship. I don't know. Entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah, well, I saw something, probably a couple months ago about hustle porn, and it's basically people that are just raving over like how much they hustle, and it's almost like that's your badge of honor. Whereas I look at it like I want to hustle the least amount, I want to work the least amount and get the biggest result. Like my goal is not to hustle harder than everyone else. My goal is actually to hustle less and still have success. Mm-hmm. That's a quote. Wow. Hustle less and still have success.
Such a nerd.
I'm going to make a t-shirt with that.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah. So, the problem here is the hustle mentality and the way that people are defining it these days helps no one. The hustle in itself, like the word and what it actually means, is not a bad thing. No, we're
absolutely.
Athletes. When you were told to hustle on the field, it was like, get back out there, help your team, keep running even though you're tired. But it was for a short period of time.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Just for the game.
Yeah, like that's sprinting. Like
yes.
There's times where you got to sprint. But if you're trying to sprint all the time, like go ask a marathon runner, like how often do you sprint? They don't sprint,
ever. No.
Right? There might be periods of time where they've got to sprint. Like you're going to sprint at the end. The beginning, you might sprint a little bit to get ahead of the pack so you can set your pace.
Yes.
But if you're on all gears, all cylinders 24/7, that's not going to last.
Nothing good comes of that.
No, not at all. Like what happens to your car if you try to do that, right? It's a thing called redlining. It doesn't work very well if you're redlining your car all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in essence, you're redlining your body. Yeah. Your body is not meant to go all the time, and your brain is not meant to go all the time either.
Well, I was going to say, another thing, man, I'm all about people sharing things, apparently. So there's another image that people share, which I think is so relevant. It's like, you ever seen this and it's got your cell phone with like the dead battery or it's red? It's like, what happens when your cell phone gets to this point? What do?
You stop and plug it in.
You plug it in. Yet a lot of people just think, well, no, I just got to push through it. Like if I push through it, that'll show that I'm committed to this. And in a lot of cases, you show your commitment by actually taking care of yourself and taking care of your team so that you can show up and your team can show up and actually do what you need to do, not just like hustle, and then fall flat on your face.
Yeah, that's why people out there are telling you to work smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm. So specifically as an entrepreneur, because, this looks a little bit different when you're working a job, because
you can still burn out working your job.
You
but
can,
yes, it looks
absolutely.
A little different.
So as an entrepreneur, though, you're wearing every hat.
Correct.
Like, especially when you start your business. And even when you grow it, you may not be doing everything, but you have a lot more responsibility.
You're responsible for everything.
So. Yeah. Rather than if you're just at a job and you're just responsible for your function or your team.
Mm-hmm. And you're accountable for the things that go wrong all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like when you're at a job, unless you're the CEO of the business, which of course you're the entrepreneur, somebody else is above you. So if something goes wrong, even if it's your team's fault or it's your own fault, ultimately that blame gets put on the highest up of all. And they're the ones who are going to be accountable for fixing it. And, maybe you keep your job, maybe you get fired, whatever, but still it's not constantly on you all the time to be the one making all the decisions, to be the one that takes the brunt of it when something fails.
I was gonna say that decision thing is so important, and like we've talked about this before, and like people joke and pick on me because I wear the same thing every day and
I like how your voice got all weird when you said
routine and try to reduce the amount of decisions I make.
Yep. Tom wears the same shirt, not the same exact shirt. He wears basically the same looking shirt every day.
I have a cartoon character closet.
You do. It's just all black t-shirts. Mostly. I mean, he does have some other shirts in there, but
yeah. Well, and
what just wears a black t-shirt.
What it comes down to, though, is that you've got so much going on as an entrepreneur, and the big mistake a lot of people make that increases their ability to burn out is that they have to make a lot of decisions. And this is one of the reasons that doing like goal planning, taking time, like we're big on doing these meetings and reflecting. We're big on putting core values together. We're big on putting systems and processes together. The reason you do all those things is so that, one, you have to make less decisions, and two, if you do have to make a decision, you've got something to give you guidance around how to make that. So for example, one of our core values is do the right thing. So whenever we're coming to a decision, we just take a step back and say, what is the right thing to do in this situation? And that makes the decision a lot easier. So it essentially gives us criteria to filter things by, which will then help avoiding this burnout and avoiding everything else that falls on our plate as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And I mean, you are going to go through a roller coaster every single day as an entrepreneur. There is ups, there's downs, there are sharp turns sideways. I mean, you plummet to the ground sometimes. That is just the way it is for many of us entrepreneurs. You know, you have the highs and lows, you have the happies and the sads, and all of it kind of gets balled up into one big thing because it's part of your life now. It's not this separation, this work-life balance concept that's out there. You don't throw in the towel when you leave every day and then go home and live your life. Like, entrepreneurship becomes a part of your life, which makes it harder to separate when you have a crappy day at work to be able to come home and still be in a good place for yourself, for your family. You know, it's really hard to deal with all those emotions, especially if you're by yourself, if you don't have a partner or a team. Yeah,
well, and part of that too is that people that aren't entrepreneurs have this assumption that, oh, you're an entrepreneur, so you make all this money, or you're so successful.
You're the boss.
And so in a lot of cases, you feel like you have to live up to that. Like, I remember the first time when I was working a job, I told someone we had another business. They're like, oh, well, why are you working here? And I'm like, because we're not making enough money yet from that business to replace my income.
Yes, business magically works like that.
Well, people just automatically assume that. They automatically assume you have money. Like, I mean, look at our donation requests that we get for our store. Everyone's just, and when we tell people that we can't donate because we've heard a donation budget, they look at us like we're the worst people in the world.
You can't donate to us. We are a business. We have to run like one, and we cannot just give money away to everybody.
We've donated a lot of money to the causes that we care about, but that doesn't mean we're going to donate money to everything. But people just have this perception, and I think we can easily fall into feeling like we have to live up to those perceptions or those expectations, which anytime we're trying to be something we're not or look like something we're not, it adds stress because it's not your natural state of being. So a big part of this too is letting go of the facade of having to always look successful, letting go of feeling like you've always got to keep up.
You always have to have it together.
Really just being comfortable with who you are and saying, like, these are the ups and downs that we go through.
Yeah. And I mean, again, social media is a big piece of this. So many of us are seeing and watching other people that we consider like, oh, it's somebody in your circle, or you consider them a competitor, or you look up to them, and you're constantly comparing yourself to what they have and what they do. That stress added on, like you're letting the imposter syndrome and the doubts wiggle in there, and adding that on top of the decision fatigue with all the things that you have to worry about every day, and the fact that life still happens while you're running your business, and you're going to have to deal with tough things like medical issues in your family, or, you know, drama, or whatever it is that's happening. I mean, maybe you're trying to potty train your kid and it's not going well. All of that stuff is adding together and compiling on top of you. So if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to fall apart. Speaking completely from experience because it's happened.
You know what else can happen? You can miss the bus.
Oh my God. Of course you put that out there today. Yep. Totally missed the bus this morning.
Yep. That is what it is. So I think
sure that's the least of our worries.
I don't know. It's like, I'll miss the bus, extra time with our kid. That's okay. But, I think the other thing that really comes up is for entrepreneurs specifically, when you leave a job and you start a business, it's very easy to fall into creating a new job for yourself and a low paying, long hours job that can easily stress you out, because there's a lot of people that fall into that rut and they're not designing a business that can run without them, but they're actually the core and they're the bottleneck in every part of their business. And some of this can come back to, like we talked about in previous episode, imposter syndrome. Some of it can come down to you actually don't have a good business model. Some of it can come down to as you're growing, you're not delegating. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but this pressure that comes up can just add so much more as an entrepreneur because you're building this job that then you really can't get out of.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially a lot of entrepreneurs come into this and end up offering some sort of service because they're an expert at something.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
And it's a really good way to start a business.
But you often end up trading your hours for dollars. And that is a really hard hamster wheel to get. It's basically you just left a job and now you've created another job, except you don't have anyone else that's accountable. You are accountable. You're the boss.
Well, and I just want to be careful here because like offering services, especially when you get started, is a really good way to go.
It is.
The key is being aware of the points when you need to shift and then make sure that you're not still trading hours for dollars, but looking for how do you leverage your time and your resources to be able to shift away from that model.
And it creates a huge financial strain because you are solely responsible for your own paycheck. There is nobody in some office somewhere cutting you a paycheck when you had a job, you showed up, you did your work, you were there when you were supposed to be there, and you went home and you were supposed to go home, and magically a check comes in the mail. That does not happen in entrepreneurship. You are 100% responsible for your financial takeaway from your business. So if you have a week where it does not go well and you don't make the money you were supposed to, now you're adding personal financial strain on top of business financial strain. Because not only do you have to figure out how to pay your business expenses, but now you didn't bring home a paycheck and now your family is suffering because maybe now you can't pay for your daughter's soccer or ballet or whatever they happen to like to do. So now it's like, now you've got this personal stress on top of it. And, a lot of people struggle because their spouse doesn't support them in their business. This does not help that at all. When you come back and you say, oh, I didn't make as much as I thought I was going to make. Now it's adding fuel to the fire that's already burning.
Well, and this is and people love to argue with us on this point when they get started. They're like, oh, my spouse doesn't have to worry about this. I don't have to get them on board. We don't have to be aligned on things. This is my thing. Anytime someone says that, the reason that we push back against that and really try to explain this to them is that down the line, those things are all going to come back. And, it may seem more difficult at the beginning. Like I can tell you firsthand, trying to get Ariana on board with the business ideas was always a challenge. But I'm so glad that we went through and actually got aligned and had conversations because then everything since from that point was a lot easier. So let's kind of shift because like you said, I think we've each experienced burnout in our own ways. Let's talk about what it is and what the impacts actually are.
So burnout is very much like depression. It can sneak up on you. You don't always realize that you're experiencing it. And, a lot of times it sort of sneaks its way in little ways of like you're irritable and you're not sure why. You lack motivation. You just can't get yourself interested in what you're doing.
You're constantly stressed out.
You're procrastinating on making decisions because you don't want to make the wrong one, or you're just really unsure because the future looks really unclear to you.
You're frustrated.
Yep, frustrated all the time. You don't want to share with everyone. So this is something where a lot of people struggle with this because you keep it internal to yourself. So you start to pull away from the people that you love and that are there to support you. You don't necessarily want to put it out there that you aren't really feeling like yourself. It's a very weird space to be in. You're tired all the time. It starts to affect your health. It starts to affect your physical body. Just being really like fatigued and sleepy, and
the relationships around you. And then all of these end up cycling back into one another. So when you're tired and frustrated, you don't feel like you want to work. So then you don't show up and do work as well.
Then you feel guilty that you didn't work.
Yeah, or you're not making as much money. And then, if you like snap at like your spouse or at, a team member, and then that impacts that relationship, and all of this stuff just spirals. And, for those that don't know, Ariana actually took like about 4 months away from our businesses.
Yep. Yeah, had to.
Yeah, because you were on the path or hit. Like, I don't know where you were.
I hit it.
Yeah, like, and the one thing,
I call it the meltdown. I had a big meltdown, but really what it was is the burnout just came bubbling up over the top and exploded everywhere.
Well, I was going to say, and let's talk about this from both perspectives, because there were times where I could see like you were frustrated. But ultimately, when, like you said, that meltdown came, a lot of it kind of blindsided me. And in hindsight, and I think as we discussed it and all of that, there were probably more signs. But one of the things you actually said was, you're like, I was really good at hiding it. And I think that's something that probably a lot of people fall into, where they're like, I'm going to deal with this. This is something for me to deal with. I don't want to show other people that, like, I'm struggling with this, or that I'm not as good because I have these feelings. And like I know in hindsight, I was like, oh man, there probably were a lot of signs that I missed, but I just didn't see it, and you weren't like raising them forward.
No, I think for me, a lot of this happened because of my personality type and my character tendencies of putting on that facade that I'm okay, that I was okay, I would handle it, I'm good, I've got it, I'm happy, we're good, we're doing all the things we need to do. I, a lot of times, would take things on internally because I didn't want to put that stress and responsibility on someone else. So, obviously in this relationship and in this business, we're working together. And a lot of times I would hold on to my own fears or my own frustrations because I didn't want to put that on Tom, on you, because I knew that you also had your own stress. You had your own stuff going on that, like, we had to make this work because this is our livelihood now. This is our business. And me adding it on to you then means that you can't do your job the way that you needed to. So in my head, it just made more sense to keep it to myself.
And
which is completely incorrect for anyone listening. Like, even though you think it might be the right thing to do, it is not the right thing to do. And this is not to say that you have to put it on your spouse, but you have to talk to somebody because it does not go away. It's not going to just magically dissipate or disappear. It just adds on and adds on until you finally explode or fall apart.
Well, I was going to say, in looking back, like, to me, this started many years ago for you.
Yes.
And I think it was like a progression up, and then there'd be like a mini meltdown or something, and then that would take some of the pressure off. It was kind of like letting some of the pressure out.
Yep.
And then it would kind of build back up again, and then some of the pressure would come out. But every time, it wasn't like it got back to where it was before. So it would just keep building and building. And I mean, this, I think, came through like having kids.
Yep.
This came through starting multiple businesses. This came through just everything else that came up in life. And finally it got to the point where, it was like, hey, let's just have you take some time to really focus on yourself. And I'll tell you, now that we're like on the other side and looking back at it, that was one of the best things ever. I think a couple things happened. One, you were able to really take care of yourself. And, we've done episodes on self-care in the past and talking about the importance of that. We've talked about like putting your own mask on first.
Mm-hmm.
I saw just a night and day difference in your level of happiness afterwards. And I also think looking at the businesses, because you were on that path to burnout, like you weren't showing up the way that you have in the past or the way you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that affected me and then everyone else around you. And I likewise, when I'm on that path where I've had a bad week or I'm really kind of going down there, I don't show up the same way and I impact you as well. Yep. So I think it's so important to realize that taking that time away, although it might seem like you're not going to get as much stuff done in the short term, ultimately is going to help in the long term because you're going to show up better, which is going to help with just about everything.
Well, and I mean, let's be completely honest here. Burnout can often uncover other issues that you were not aware of. So, for those of you that have some things going on and, maybe it's taken you some years, maybe you know about them, but you just haven't taken the time to take care of yourself and deal with them. That makes the path to burnout much, much shorter and more likely to happen. So for me, having that burnout, that low moment actually made me take a step back and realize all the other issues that were underlying that I hadn't dealt with. And that's part of what you were talking about with like, this has been going on for years. Mm-hmm. There were things that were happening for years that I either was not aware of or just didn't think it was important enough to step in and do something.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's an important
I thought it was
point.
normal.
I think that's an important point too, is all these little things can compile.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at it on its own, it's like, oh, well, I'm feeling more tired or whatever the one thing is. In isolation, maybe it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But when these things compound, and especially compound over time, these things that at one point were small and, had we like dealt with or realized, maybe it wouldn't have been such a big thing, but over years and over everything else coming on.
Well, and they happen, they're
bigger.
little, they're little. So they happen and then you kind of, you don't really think about it. And then over time it becomes normal. That's just a normal thing. That's just how I am, or that's just a part of our life. So then that's normal. Then another little thing happens. And then over time, that's just normal. That's just how it is. So, all those little pieces of wrongness are just kind of merging their way into your life. And because in your head it's been normalized, you are completely unaware that they're there and that they were affecting you in that way. So until I started to go and talk to the therapist, like we started marriage therapy last year, that was one of the best things we did because that actually brought those issues up to the surface. And I think in some cases caused my meltdown because all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, I'm not okay.
Well, and I was
but that was a good thing because I needed that to happen. Otherwise, I would have exploded somewhere else down the line.
And I was going to say, that was a really good point. So part of you taking that time away was because, especially when this stuff builds up over time, as you start peeling back the layers, you find more and more stuff that you maybe didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, when we first started, with working with a marriage therapist, it was really just about us and our relationship and, some of the challenges we were having and how we make it better.
Yep.
And then what that came into was that, well, what are the reasons for this? And as you start diving down into any sort of issue, there's usually the symptoms, which are what we often see, and then there's root causes.
Mm-hmm.
And, we always tell people what you want to be doing is solving the root causes, because if you're just solving the symptoms, the root causes are never going to be gone and it's going to keep coming back.
Yep.
And part of you taking that time was because you really needed to work on the root causes and make sure that those were dealt with, which, like I said, I think that's what's caused a lot of this to work so much better now, is because those underlying things that have been there for years, one, we became aware of them. And then two, we gave ourselves the space to be able to work through them.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people don't look for those warning signs along the way and then don't realize the work that's required and give themselves the grace to actually do that work.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you're growing a business, it's forcing you to constantly grow and it's challenging the stories that you've been telling yourself, the perceptions that you've had. And it is more challenging than most people realize. They think business is about the strategy and the tactics. And if I just learn this thing, what so many people don't talk about is the mental side of growing a business and everything that comes with that.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting because I've shared this story a little bit more openly with people over the last couple months. And a lot of what I hear is, wow, you were so lucky that you could take that time off. And I completely agree with them. I do consider myself lucky, but I also want to stress the point that I did not have a choice, because if I hadn't taken that time off, I would be in a worse position now than I was then. That it was a very serious thing that I went through, and mentally, emotionally, physically, if I had not taken that space, I probably would not be here today. I wouldn't be sitting here on this podcast with you, because I probably would have given up on entrepreneurship altogether and had to go back and get a job and be figuring out what my life was going to look like now that things had changed.
Yeah. Well, and so two things. One, whenever people say you're lucky, usually what that means is that you made a lot of smart decisions along the way that set yourself up to have options. And when I look at what we've been able to do, that's really what it was we set ourselves up to have options. But two, in your case, things that seem like you can't do it, there's sometimes where, and more often than not, we should be doing this, where you put yourself first and it's a temporary maybe inconvenience, but in the bigger picture, it makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that say, well, I can't do that. And the question is, well, what would need to be true? How do I make that time? Because
well, I can't take a week off of work.
Yeah. Well, what's going to happen if you don't take a week off and then you got to take 6 months off because
you have a mental breakdown and you can't function enough to do your work.
Exactly. And that's why.
Or physically, we've actually talked to people who were in the corporate world and had physical issues with their health, health problems. They could not work their jobs anymore. It was physically taking a toll on them, and obviously also mentally taking a toll on them. So they literally had to basically quit their very high-paying, successful jobs to step back and do something else, because they knew if they didn't, it was going to kill them.
Yeah. And that's where in the moment, it can seem like you don't have options. But the thing I always tell people is you always have options. They may not be the ones you like, but taking care of yourself first, taking care of yourself mentally, physically, that is the most important thing. And if you don't do that, you're only going to be able to do so much else with everything else that you want to do, whether it's a job, whether it's a business, whether it's your family. So, I think kind of wrapping this all up, one, it's important to really start looking for those signs, the fatigue, the stress, the not feeling into it anymore, the frustration. But then two,
the hiding.
When you identify that, really making sure that you're taking time not to just brush it off, but to say, what is the right move in this case to take care of that and to help not only me, but then also all the people around me too that are going to be affected by this.
Yep.
So anything else you want to discuss as we kind of go forward?
I think we covered most of it.
Yeah. So
in a roundabout way.
Yeah. So ultimately, I guess the thing I'll leave you guys with is this is real. This happens. Make sure that you're looking for it. And then there's also a lot of things you can do that will make this easier for you. So lean on people around you. Most people, especially the people that are close to you, are there to help. And oftentimes the reason they may not be helping is because they don't see it.
Yes.
So
because they think you're okay.
Yeah, because you're putting on that facade.
Yep.
But those people, when push comes to shove, the people that are truly there for you will step up and be there for you and get that support around you.
Yep.
It's one of the most important things is having that support, and you're going to do it with other people too, being able to support them when they're going through the tough stuff.
Yeah. And I think prevention is the best medicine for burnout, just like anything else in our physical bodies and mental state. Make sure that you're taking the time to take care of yourself. And I'm not just talking about working out and eating healthier. I'm talking about your mental space. Protect your mental space because that is the most important thing for you to be able to function in your business and in your personal life. Make sure that you're taking time out for you, not with your spouse, not with your kids, individual you time, because that was one of my biggest mistakes, was thinking that I was spending quality time with Tom and with the kids, so I was okay. Not true.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to take that time for you, even if it's only a half an hour to yourself, like getting out of the house or kicking everyone else out of the house so that you have a quiet space, or maybe your spouse is a morning person and you're a night owl. However it works for you, find the space for yourself and do what puts you in your happy place. I don't care if it's the stupidest thing ever, do it. I like adult coloring. I'm not ashamed of that. It's fun. I used to love coloring as a child, so it only makes sense that I still enjoy it as an adult. I love singing. I leave the house every single week, unless I am sick, for 3 hours to be surrounded by other people who also love singing, and it gets me out of the house. And I have a friend there who I absolutely adore. So I get some friend time in too. Find the things that make you happy and that fill that inner gap in yourself, and do those, and make sure that you are constantly doing that, because if you let it slip, you're going to start to notice that the things in your business and in your life will start to slip as well.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. Final thing, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. A lot of people say, well, I can't do that. Like I don't have the time. I don't have the money. One thing we've always seen is that there's always a slice of that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, you might want to do something big, but maybe you really don't have the time.
Like go on a girls trip to Vegas.
Yeah. So maybe you don't have the time or money, you can't coordinate that right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't schedule lunch, with some of your girlfriends.
Or you can't go rent an Airbnb in the same town you live in with a couple friends and just have a night in and do some enjoyable things.
Exactly. So there's always ways to do it. And so the biggest thing I think for a lot of people is saying that you can't do it, but really saying like, how can I do this? Or how can I do a piece of this?
Mm-hmm.
How can I start doing this and then incrementally do
habit.
more as we go on? So with that, let's get to some actions that people can take. So I'll kick things off. What I want you to do is to just be aware of all the signs that we talked about that you may be on that path to burnout.
But in yourself, because it may look different for you.
In yourself. Yep. So take a look at all of those and really just kind of get a gauge for where you're at. Like, are you at a good place, or are you going down that path of burnout? Because like you said, prevention is the best medicine. And the sooner you identify that, the sooner that you can start asking for help, taking action. And the earlier you catch this, the easier it is to resolve.
And my action for you is, if you have experienced burnout, I would love, love, love for you to share your story with us. If you're comfortable enough, I would love for you to share it publicly in a comment or posting it on our Facebook page. But I know that might be really personal. So if you don't want to share it publicly, I would still love for you to share it with me privately. So you can email me at ariana@tomandariana.com. Because, I'm always looking for other people to talk to. And one of the best ways to recover from going through burnout is to talk to somebody who's been through it. So I would love to hear your story, and I would love to offer any advice or just a listening ear for you to tell that to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so actually on that note, if you guys are going through burnout or struggling with some of this and need somebody to talk to, feel free to email Ariana, but also feel free to jump on a call with me. I've worked with entrepreneurs at all different levels, and usually when the first sign or the first step is, acknowledging that you have it, in a lot of cases, there's a couple tweaks that we can make to start reducing some of the stress and allowing you not to hit burnout.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's easier for someone else to see that
100% of the time
and help share that clarity with you.
Yeah. I mean, like even just recently, there was someone who was working like 16-hour days. They had their team working 16-hour days, and everything was just struggling and stressed out. And we just had a couple of sessions. We identified where the issues were, a couple tweaks to make. And this person reached out and said, you know what, thank you so much. They almost canceled a vacation for their birthday that they had planned because they were so stressed out and they felt like they had to work. And afterwards, they came back and said, you're right. I needed that. I'm glad I didn't cancel. I had a meeting with my team where all this stuff that was on me, I actually asked the team for help and they each took pieces of it. And I feel so much better. So if you're struggling with this, please do not suffer in silence. Reach out to Ariana, reach out to myself, or if there's somebody else that you feel comfortable with, reach out. But if you do want to grab a call with me, tomandariana.com/apply, and that'll get you into a call with me. We can talk about what's going on and see if we can help you.
All right. And as always, don't forget the Lifestyle Builders book is coming out in a very short time. So if you're interested in learning more and you want to sign up for the book list to be the first to know when it's available, go to tomandariana.com/book. All right. It's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, I want you guys to remember that it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.